Tonight we journey back to the year 1665, when the streets of London fell silent under the shadow of the Great Plague. By candlelight we'll wander through narrow lanes, hear the whispers of the time, and uncover how the city endured one of its darkest summers. So, settle in, make yourself comfortable, and let the story carry you off into the past. It began quietly. In late 1664, a comet appeared in the sky. To many, it seemed like a sign, an omen of trouble to come. And in a city like London, already crowded and strained, it didn't take much for fear to take root. The London of that time was still a medieval maze, 448 acres behind ancient stone walls, and inside those walls, the city pressed in on itself. The poorest neighbourhoods were tightly packed, with little fresh air, no proper waste systems, and open drains running down the streets. Household waste, animal droppings, and every kind of refuse lined the roads. People carried little posies of fragrant flowers, nosegays, to mask the overpowering smells. Rubbish collectors, called rakers, worked to remove the worst of the mess, but much of it was simply flung beyond the city walls, where it gathered and grew. Coal arrived by barge, but most supplies came by road, causing constant congestion. London Bridge became a daily bottleneck of carts, animals and pedestrians. Unless you had the means to travel by carriage, navigating the city meant weaving through narrow, grimy lanes, dodging whatever came falling from windows above. And the air, thick with smoke from coal fires, breweries and forges, was heavy and hard to breathe. London, by 1664, was crowded, polluted, and unknowingly primed for a storm. No one saw it arrive. The plague likely came aboard a Dutch ship from Amsterdam, hidden in a shipment of cloth. The first quiet cases appeared in the poorest areas near the docks and in the parish of St Giles. Deaths began to rise, slowly at first. 4 plague deaths were recorded by the end of April 1665. But overall, death numbers were creeping upward. As the warmer months arrived, the infections spread. More cases emerged in nearby parishes. One even occurred inside the city walls. By then, the government began to act, forming committees and issuing orders. Some alehouses were closed, and attempts were made to limit overcrowding in homes. The Lord Mayor issued a call for cleanliness, asking people to sweep the streets outside their homes. More rakers were hired, quarantines were put in place, travellers were questioned. But in a city so densely packed, it wasn't enough. On the 30th of April, the diarist, Samuel Pepys, wrote, "Great fears of the sickness here in the city. God preserve us all." And still the disease spread. Its symptoms came quickly. First a fever, a deep chill, aching limbs and pounding headaches. Then came the buboes, swollen painful lumps in the neck, armpits or groin. Skin turned dark. The sick grew weak, confused, and often slipped into a silent, feverish haze. Death could come in a matter of days. In some forms, such as pneumonic or septicemic plague, it came even faster. By July, panic had taken hold. The wealthy fled the city. King Charles II and his court escaped to the countryside. London began to empty. Only those without the means to leave remained: clergy, physicians, apothecaries and the poor. Some stayed out of duty, others simply had no choice. Those trying to leave needed a certificate of good health signed by the Lord Mayor. These were hard to get, and beyond the city, nearby towns began to turn travellers away. Many were left stranded, exhausted, dehydrated, and exposed to the elements in the summer heat. Some died not from the plague itself, but from hunger and thirst. By the end of July, more than 2,000 people were dying each week. Traditional graveyards could no longer cope, and the city began to dig large communal pits to bury the dead. Carts moved through the streets at night, calling out for families to bring their loved ones. The aim was to be discreet, to protect the public from further fear, but it wasn't enough. The scale of loss became impossible to hide. Doctors tried their best. They wore long coats and beaked masks, their faces hidden behind glass eyepieces. The beaks were filled with scented herbs, lavender, rose petals, mint, meant to block out the bad air people believed was spreading the disease. They carried wooden canes to examine patients without touching them. Their understanding was limited, but their courage should not be overlooked. They stayed when others could not. Others made tragic mistakes. Thinking that animals were to blame, authorities ordered the killing of cats and dogs, likely removing the very creatures who might have kept the rats at bay. Fires were lit in the streets in the hope that the smoke would cleanse the air. Hearths were kept burning day and night. The smoke thickened, but the plague continued. And then finally, it began to subside. By late autumn, the death toll slowed. Winter came, and with it, a quiet stillness. By early 1666, the royal court returned. Shops reopened. The city began to breathe once more. But the story doesn't end there. Far from London, in the quiet village of Ireham in Derbyshire, another story was unfolding. In the summer of 1665, the plague had reached the village, possibly in a parcel of cloth from the city. Illness followed quickly. But instead of fleeing, the villagers made a choice. Guided by their rector, they decided to stay, to quarantine themselves and protect the surrounding towns. They marked a boundary and asked for no one to enter. In return, neighbouring villages brought food and left it at a stone on the edge of Ireham. The villagers placed coins in small holes filled with vinegar, believing it would cleanse the payment. It was a quiet, careful act of courage. Nearly a third of the village perished, but their sacrifice worked. The plague did not spread beyond Ireham. Centuries later, scientists discovered that some of the villagers had carried a rare genetic trait that gave them natural immunity to the disease. Their descendants, still living in Ireham, carry that trait to this day. Some believe the nursery rhyme, Ring a Ring a Roses, was inspired by the plague, the ring symbolising the rash, the sneezes, the fall, a simple song with roots in a much deeper story. And now, as the city sleeps and the world is quiet once more, may this story remind us of resilience, of the strength found in community, and of how, even in the darkest times, hope finds a way to return. Good night.